is the cleanest of clean finishers from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's a very good evening, Zimbabwe, Tuesday evening. Topic Tuesday here on ZiFM Sport. The team is here to deliver yet another great edition of your favorite show, ZiFM Sport. They are Mike Madoda, Chris Gray, our producer, Sean Tafirenyika, and of course, we've got our soccer pundit, and that is Alois Bunjira. What can you look forward to on the show today? Well, on the home front, the Premier Soccer League Medical Committee's report setting guidelines for the safe return to training will be ready in a fortnight.
In international sports news, we have our staple, the Formula One report, proudly brought to you by Zimoco, where Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has said that the team is in good hands, with Lewis Hamilton expected to sign a new deal, but says the team needs to think about the mid to long term when considering their 2021 lineup. And around the world in 60, we start in England, where international cricket will start to get back on its feet following the coronavirus shutdown after the West Indies arrived for a test series in England. In New Zealand, the Highlanders are hoping 20,000 fans will attend Saturday's Super Rugby at-a-row match against the Chiefs in Dunedin. And we'll end in the United States, where the Golden State Warriors expect to have a better idea about how Klay Thompson's recovery from reconstructive left knee surgery is going once the team can finally reconvene.
Don't miss out on our play of the day as we dish out another top track on Top Hits Tuesday. And then we kick off the beautiful game, which will start in England, where Chelsea are reportedly plotting another Bundesliga raid as they prepare a bid for Bayer Leverkusen star Kai Havertz, whom they are looking to pair up with Germany teammate Timo Werner. In La Liga, Sergio Ramos' 15-year career with Real Madrid looks likely to be extended, with the captain set to be offered a new deal. In Serie A, the Italian football season could finish without a champion if Serie A is stopped again because of the coronavirus pandemic. And will touch down in the Bundesliga. Germany boss Joachim Löw has revealed that he plans to use Bayern Munich star Leon Goretzka as a right back.
The Home Front. Local sports news and analysis. From Rufaro to Barberfield, Mandava to Nyamunga, all the perfect moments in the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League come together on ZiFM Sport.
As always, we kick off on the home front, and we got a local football special. News out of the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League is that the medical committee's report setting guidelines for the safe return to training will be ready in a fortnight. The medical committee is chaired by ZIFA head of medical committee Edward Chagonda and his experienced Zimbabwe Olympic Committee medical commissioner Nicholas Munyonga. The team of doctors was assigned to draw protocols and procedures to be followed by clubs for the safe return of football activity after the COVID-19 lockdown. Chagonda says the document they are working on will be submitted to government through the Sports and Recreation Commission, the SRC. So it looks like there's finally some work being done behind the scenes, but I would have thought, Alois, that this document should have been prepared several weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm listening and I'm hearing that it's going to be ready in 2 weeks' time, which means that they have actually started. I don't know why have we been waiting for? Because we have been in lockdown for some time now, and obviously they would have seen what is going on and all the facts that they needed. I don't know, but anyway, like you said, at least some work is being done now. At least there's movement. But I agree with you 100% that I would have thought that this would have been started a while ago.
Barry, in a country, I think, that has experienced less than 300 cases of COVID-19 infections, 4 deaths in total, you'd have thought that the planning would have been relatively simple. And, coming up with the protocols would have been something that should have been done in light of the data that we have from the medical authorities in the country.
Yeah, certainly. I think we sort of fell asleep at the wheel, to be fair, because we haven't anticipated where we're headed, and we can anticipate it from a perspective of those who have experienced the virus before. This all started in China. China have gone in, come out. Europe has gone in, come out. America is on their way out. South America is now bearing the brunt.
New Zealand
is on its way
just declared the all
clear. So we know at what. Yeah, New Zealand has declared the all clear, and we've got countless cases or case studies that we could have drawn from, and I think we didn't, because there are possibly 5 or 6 elements that you need to consider with COVID-19. Not being a medical professional myself, but you just need to consider the fact that where are you in terms of your infection curve? Number 2, what is happening from a broader societal level in terms of internal infections and also those imported. Right now we're on the imported infection side. So you know how to respond to each of those stimuli, and in truth we should have done that. And perhaps we were just enjoying the lockdown a little too much.
And even in the case, Chris, where our football administrators were fearful that, okay, maybe the stats look good right now. Maybe the rate of infection is not as great as it's going to be in the future. But isn't that where you draw up sort of like different scenarios? You sort of like work on different plans. And I get the feeling these guys are just working on one plan.
Definitely. I think if you take a look at the rest, I think let's just take a look at Germany specifically. Germany had different plans, and they started planning at the height of coronavirus, when they had a very high infection rate, when everything was pretty much going lopsided in Germany. The cases are climbing, the deaths were climbing as well. And what they did was that they were planning with that scenario in mind. So what that does is then you're prepared for the worst case scenario. With our local administrators here, my fear is that, like you said, they're only making one plan. They're only making one contingency plan. That my other fear is that they're not planning with the worst case scenario in mind. They're just kind of looking at things and saying, okay, well, things have kind of stabilized and hopefully we'll be coming out of lockdown. So this is the plan that we'll be creating. I hope that this is a very stringent plan. I hope it's a plan that's going to take into consideration a number of factors and how the different teams will be interacting, whether it's travel, whether it's on match day specifically, what those protocols are going to be. I really hope that they're taking all of this into consideration.
Well, you mentioned the worst case scenario, Chris, and Alois, I just want us to discuss or touch on this worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is that football will resume behind closed doors in Zimbabwe, but it's a scenario that very few clubs can ill afford.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've always asked that question, like how are the clubs going to survive? We already hear people saying that clubs, they need the assistance of ZiFM. The ZiFM has also obliged and said that they're going to give them a relief fund. But then when we restart, isn't that going to be the same case? Because our clubs, they don't do football business in its entirety. They only work with gate checking. So with no fans, which club, let's say Islanders, Dynamos, Cape United, those are the bigger teams that I can think of that actually we can actually talk about fans and gate checking. How are they going to survive without that? You see, when they don't have any other sources of fans. So it's going to be a very, very difficult situation, very difficult scenario. I don't know how it's going to happen, how they're going to do it. I actually think that the clubs that have been surviving without the gate checking might just survive, might be in a better position because they're used to it already. Let's say or Herenthouse, they already know that they're not depending on gate checking. They already didn't have fans. So they might just know our money was not coming from there anyway. So they will just getting, but maybe not affected that much in this. I don't know.
Bunj, it also brings up the question that if we do come up with a protocol that when we get back to playing, we're playing without fans, the difference between us in Europe is that the clubs in Europe are restarting without fans because they've got TV contracts and also they've got TV viewership. as far as I know, we don't have a TV contract. We don't have a broadcaster who carries certainly our top tier of domestic football in any fashion or way. So I think there needs to be a localization of any plan that comes up. We need to localize it and have it bespoke for our situation on the ground. What I would prefer is for people to go into stadiums, but to have a cap on the number of people who can go into a stadium, and also make sure that they're exercising social distancing and everyone in the stadium is required to wear a mask. That's possibly what would work in this environment.
Barry, I like the fact that you were thinking, and that's great. But Chris, we are operating in an environment where we are failing to steward matches under normal circumstances. We're failing to police matches under normal circumstances. When there's been no COVID, when there's been little or no trouble, we've failed to steward our matches. Now, how do we enforce social distancing? How do we enforce all these things at Rufaro Stadium, at Barberfield Stadium? When we are failing just to do the basics, when we can't even handle crowd trouble that has got possibly 10 or 15 individuals involved.
I think this is an absolute nightmare for Zimbabwean football at the moment, because everything that we're talking about, everything from the medical planning that needs to take place, bringing it down to on a specific match day, how is the stewarding going to work? Because they've never wanted to deal with all of these problems before. The fact that they don't have a broadcaster they didn't want to deal with before. Now we're taking a look at specifically on match day, how are we going to be able to control those crowds? How are we going to be able to control? And we all know what football fans are like in this country. The people who actually go to the matches week in, week out, that's a particularly difficult crowd of people to control. So I'm not sure if they'll need to actually partner up with the police and have a sit down with them while they're doing all of this medical planning to see, okay, what plans can we put in place? I'm not sure if the police are keen. I'm not sure if they have the capacity even, bearing in mind that they're supposed to be policing the rest of the country anyway. So it's a nightmare for them. But like we're saying, they should have started this planning a very long time ago. And I think by now we should have a solid plan where issues like stewarding would be taken care of. And my hope is that in this scenario where we're being pressurized to think about these issues, that this is where our solutions come out and we are able to extrapolate these into the future as well.
Guys, we're also having a discussion that's slightly ahead of what the football leaders are actually considering. Because if I remember correctly, Mikey, you said that there is a plan for returning to training that'll be ready in a fortnight.
Yeah.
They haven't considered what a match day will look like or how we return to actually playing games. So I truly feel that it should be a coordinated plan. And it's a way we need to get together, coordinate, and make sure that we are ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why when, Project Restart was mooted in England, Project Restart was not just a plan to return to training. It had step 1, it had step 2, step 3, and step 4 being match day, the return of football, as we are going to see next week. So that's the sort of thinking that we should be encouraging at the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League as well as at ZiFM. Now, there's been talk of a bailout by ZiFM, that they're going to bail out teams in the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League. And for me, the big concern is that whilst they're talking bailouts, whilst they're talking handouts, we're not hearing any figures. We're not hearing any amounts being mentioned in the public domain. We wait with bated breath to find out how much exactly our teams are going to receive in the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League, and also for ZiFM to answer the question, why the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League only, when there's football being played in Division 1 as well as Division 2 and in other junior leagues around the country.
Hi, I'm Clemens Matau, chicken in midfielder. You're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Let's go to our local sports news roundup, starting with rugby, where the Sables will need to win the 2022 edition of the Rugby Africa Cup to automatically qualify for the Rugby World Cup 2023, which is being held in France. The qualification formula for the global showcase was announced by World Rugby yesterday. Zimbabwe senior national 15s rugby side will be aiming to finally compete in their first World Cup final after 29 years by qualifying for the 2023 edition. The Sables last played in the World Cup back in 1991 in a tournament stage in 5 European countries, but since then played second fiddle to rivals Namibia, who have qualified for the last 6 editions of the tournament. Over to tennis news now, where Emakhandeni Tennis Club is bracing for the return of players to training and has stepped up preparations for their safe return to the court. Coach Kumbulani Tembo said while they'll put in place some health and safety measures at the facility, players also have to make sure that they are exercising safety on their own. Tembo has been coaching grassroots tennis since 2002, and among his prodigies are Nicole Kumwenda, Hilary Ncube, and Bakale Mukombwe, who all moved to the United States of America. It is news that sports associations have been challenged to take advantage of the Olympic Games, which have been delayed by a year, as a learning curve in preparing for major global sporting events. The Games, penciled for Tokyo in Japan, were initially set for this year, but were rescheduled to next year between the 23rd of July and the 8th of August, owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Zimbabwe Olympic Committee had already undertaken preparatory meetings with relevant stakeholders with the target of taking 10 athletes to the Games while leaving the door open for others. While everything seemed to be in order before the global pandemic struck, Team Zimbabwe's chef de mission to the Games, Tabani Gonye, believes that long-term preparations are the missing link in achieving the desired results.
Hi, this is Mike Madoda, and you can catch me and the team for all the latest breaking news out of the world of sport, local as well as international, on your favorite station, my station, your station, ZiFM. We are Z-Team on ZiFM Sport.
Z. International Sports News Roundup, where the world comes out to play. From sunny Melbourne to the streets of Monaco, the deserts of Bahrain to the jungles of Brazil, get up to speed on the Formula One Report. The Formula One Report is proudly brought to you by Zimoco, the home of F1 brands Mercedes-Benz and Alfa Romeo in Zimbabwe. Zimoco, specialized service for special brands.
The Formula One Report is always proudly brought to you by Zimoco, and we are more than just Mercedes. We are home to a lot of exciting brands, such as the Haval brand. Now, Haval is China's #1 selling luxury SUV brand for the last 16 consecutive years, selling over 1 million units per year. And you can see why. These luxury SUVs are Zimbabwe's most affordable SUV, and they boast reliability, performance, safety, and quality, with the added benefit of backup for service and parts through Zimoco.
Let's get into the cars. There's the Haval H1, which is a compact crossover, which it's a smash hit success in global markets and loved by Zimbabwe's trendy urbanites. Sporting fresh looks and lots of features as standard, the H1 represents very affordable crossover attitude. Its raised ground clearance makes it a confident runner in the urban jungle or on gravel roads, and the interior's host of entertainment features makes sure that the road trip never gets boring.
Then there's the Haval H2, which is perfect, small, stylish family SUV, and it features a 1.5-litre petrol engine with a 6-speed automatic transmission. It features all-round airbags, automatic air conditioning, keyless entry system, push-start button, camera and park distance control, leather seats, sunroof, as well as many other exciting features. Definitely a leader in its segment. Stay tuned to find out more about Haval.
Z.
All right, let's get into our Formula One report proper, where Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has said the team is in, quote, good hands, with Lewis Hamilton expected to sign a new deal, but says the team need to think about the mid to long term when considering their 2021 lineup. Mercedes, unlike rivals Ferrari and Red Bull, don't have a driver signed up for next season. And although Wolff spoke positively about Hamilton's talks, he has admitted that Sebastian Vettel is a contender for one of their seats. Let's hear from him.
The moment Lewis touches down back in Europe, we will sit down and carve out what needs to be carved out. We are together since, I believe it's 8 years now, so the agreements don't need to be reinvented. There's a good basis, and I believe we could come to a point pretty swiftly. I think our relationship is based on trust. You know that your partner is not going to let you down. We all, of course, are aware that Formula One is a tough business, but I think what made this team different is that loyalty, trust, and trust are important values, and we live them every day. I said it before, Sebastian is a 4-time world champion, and him suddenly becoming available was unexpected, and therefore it is a situation that needs to be monitored. Where could he potentially go? Where are we with our drivers? And what I said is that I wouldn't discount Sebastian for any seat. And we have looked at the situation. Our priority and concentration is on our Mercedes drivers. That's Lewis, Valtteri, and the juniors. George Russell being one of them. Esteban obviously is a Renault driver today. And only if we can't find a solution within that group of drivers, we will look elsewhere. And then obviously Sebastian is in a very good position.
Toto Wolff, always a good one for a soundbite, but this one is not just a soundbite. This is him making and giving the team sound advice about the way forward and the future, isn't it, Chris? They've got to really consider what they're going to be doing in the sort of mid to long term, to quote his words.
Definitely. I think it's time for them to consider what happens after Hamilton. He's been a really great driver for them, 6 championships. I think he's done a brilliant job, but I think Toto Wolff is doing a good job in terms of thinking what happens from next season on. Who do they bring on in order to continue the trajectory that they're on? It's perfectly fine and good to say, okay, Mercedes is enjoying a good run at the moment and probably will likely be enjoying a good run when the season starts. But going forward, what do they do in terms of the next driver that they'll be priming up?
Hamilton, an absolutely fantastic driver. Mike, you have said on and off air that you felt that perhaps one last hurrah for Lewis Hamilton would be for him to at least sit in a Ferrari vehicle. You see that happening in the short to medium term?
It could happen, Barry. Let's not forget that Ferrari is the marquee team of Formula One. Mercedes has been successful in recent years, but they are by no means as big a team as Ferrari. So it would be something I think that Lewis Hamilton would view as a badge of honor for him to have at least driven for Ferrari. It would be a nice way for him to cap off a stellar career, especially, of course, seeing as he's got a great chance to pull alongside Michael Schumacher and then even go one better or two better than Michael Schumacher in the next few seasons that he's actually driving at the very top level. So for me, it's exciting. The other thing, Barry, is that Sebastian Vettel, he's another driver that's being talked up by Mercedes. Let's not forget that Mercedes are a German team. They're not British. So Sebastian Vettel is German. And so you can immediately see where the synergy would be in that particular combination if it were to come to pass. So they don't have any drivers locked down from 2021. So Sebastian Vettel, if he has a good agent and he's got good PR, he could fancy his chances of ending up in a Mercedes seat.
Certainly would be an interesting one and interesting times for the Silver Arrows, who themselves have said that they'll be looking internally with Valtteri Bottas, and he, of course, he's partnered Lewis Hamilton since 2017. George Russell, who's currently at Williams, and Esteban Ocon, who's at Renault, set to be given priority when it comes to picking their next driver lineup. Interesting times in Formula One ahead, and it's always interesting to see how Toto Wolff will respond to this stimuli.
Right, more news on the Haval, and this time I'm talking about the H6, which is a sporty mid-sized SUV that combines a strong, rigid body shell with sleek curves that turns heads from all angles. It features a 2-litre petrol direct injection engine with a 6-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. Key features are blind spot monitoring, panoramic sunroof, reverse camera, 8-inch color LCD touch display multimedia with Bluetooth, and so much more.
Now let's go on to the big daddy, the big one of them all. I love it when you call me Big Papa. The H9, it's a bold, luxury, 7-seater SUV. It features an efficient and powerful 2-liter petrol turbocharged direct injection engine with an impressive fuel consumption of 10.9 liters every 100 kilometers. And this large SUV comes with all the bells and whistles that you would expect to find in a luxury vehicle, including massage seats. Oh yeah, you need those. All our Haval models are of excellent quality and are competitively priced. They also include a first free service at Zimoco, full genuine parts and service backup, as well as 3 years or 100,000 kilometers warranty, whichever comes first.
Now, why don't you nip over and visit our Zimoco showroom at Sim Levy's Village, Borodale, to test drive these amazing vehicles for yourself. But please remember to wear your mask and sanitize your hands on entry into any one of our Zimoco premises. For the protection of our staff and other customers, no mask, no entry. Have a lovely week, Zimbabwe, and don't forget to tune in next week for more product and service updates and specials from Zimoco.
The Formula One Report is proudly brought to you by Zimoco, the home of F1 brands Mercedes-Benz and Alfa Romeo in Zimbabwe. Zimoco, specialized service for special brands.
Hi, my name is Sean Williams, Zimbabwe cricket captain. You're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Z. Around the world in 60 seconds. International sports news.
We take off in England, where international cricket will start to get back on its feet following the coronavirus shutdown as the West Indies arrived for a test series in England. Fans who have had to make do with months of television repeats can now look forward to the real thing again, with England captain Joe Root saying of the West Indies' decision to tour, "It must be extremely scary, and I think the whole cricketing world will be grateful to see some cricket again." The 3-match contest was originally meant to be played in June, but will now start on the 8th of July instead because of the coronavirus pandemic. We head over to New Zealand, where the Highlanders are hoping 20,000 fans will attend Saturday's Super Rugby Aotearoa match against the Chiefs in Dunedin. It will be the first major rugby match to be played in front of fans since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, with no limitation on crowd size. Meanwhile, the Blues expect as many as 35,000 to attend Sunday's game against the Hurricanes because of the large number of All Blacks involved. The decision of the New Zealand government to drop all restrictions on the size of public gatherings means social distancing is no longer required and sports can take place in full stadiums. We touch down in the United States, where the Golden State Warriors expect to have a better idea about how Klay Thompson's recovery from reconstructive left knee surgery is going once the team can finally reconvene after the long separation caused by the coronavirus pandemic. For now, General Manager Bob Myers has encouraged Thompson has experienced no setbacks during the extensive rehabilitation process. Thompson tore his ACL in his left knee on the 13th of June during Game 6 of the NBA Finals against the Toronto Raptors and had surgery on the 2nd of July.
Hi, I'm Warriors coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference. Z. The big leagues, the big teams, the big players. The beautiful game on ZiFM Sport. All the rivalry.
Here is Harry Kane for Tottenham. Oh, what a goal! A classic derby goal from Harry Kane. Catch him if you can.
All the stars.
Oh, back here's Liverpool 2 in front. Talk about impudence. Talk about improvisation. Talk about Sadio Mane.
And all the game-changing moments.
And Raheem Sterling rattles it home. And once more, City are in front in a trice.
All the updates from the Premier League on ZiFM Sport.
Chelsea will attempt another raid on the Bundesliga with a move for Bayer Leverkusen starlet Kai Havertz, expected to seal the £53 million transfer of RB Leipzig centre-forward Timo Werner when the transfer window opens. Chelsea also want a young white player to replace the outgoing Brazilian Willian and Spaniard Pedro. It is understood that the 20-year-old Havertz is the player they want, even though they'll face fierce competition from other top European clubs. Exciting times if you're a Chelsea fan. Exciting times if you're Frank Lampard, Alois. It looks like Chelsea intend to buy big this coming off season?
Yeah, Mike, I actually think that it might just be Frank Lampard's idea, I wanted to go youth all the way, but it might just cost me my job because people might just not be patient enough to wait for these youngsters to grow and be mature and start winning things. So I think they have now decided, we sit down, let's make it a balance. We need to make it a balance so that we can actually groom these youngsters while we are fighting for honors as well. So I think they've decided they're going to buy big. They're going to go back to the Abramovich situation where he buys big, he wants the championship, he wants to fight for honors. And Frank Lampard say, why not? Let me just do it. Because, there are some times when you just go for sentiment, another development, but you won't survive with that. So he has actually decided, probably on his career as well, that he also wants caps on his head. He also wants honors. He wants medals. He has just gone for that, and he wants Chelsea to start winning again. And probably he was actually hearing murmurs in the corridors from Chelsea fans that we won't go anywhere with these youngsters. As much as we want them promoted, we also want to win things. So I think he has alluded to that, and he's going for profit. They want honors, and I agree. 100%. This is the time they need to jack up their act and start buying big and start competing with the big guys.
Chris, Frank Lampard is going for youth, but when you take a look at the quality of the players that's being talked about, Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, they've already, of course, bagged Hakim Ziyech from Ajax. He's going to be arriving. They signed Pulisic before the arrival of Frank Lampard at Stamford Bridge. These are quality young players that surely can see Chelsea make a sustained challenge at the top.
Definitely. I think that he's managed to get himself a good crop of players. Young they may be, but I think he's managed to get himself a good crop of players. And if they do manage to get Kai Havertz, I think that'll be another great player for Chelsea. But I think it's striking that balance between experience and the youth. And like Alois is saying, in terms of patience, how long until we actually see Chelsea challenging for honours? How long till we... In fact, you know what? In as much as we'll be able to see possibly Chelsea sitting in the top 4, I think the other teams as well are not slowing down. And in terms of actually challenging for that EPL trophy, I think that it's going to take a couple of more seasons. If this is where Frank Lampard has decided to place his money, and the thing is he's spending quite big in the season, then he needs to be very sure that, first of all, he's got the backing of the team, that this is a long-term ideal, that they're not challenging for the next season, but they'll be challenging for the future. So, it's going to be an interesting thing to see if he does manage to strike that balance. And if he does manage to strike it, then we can talk about the fact that Chelsea can challenge for the cup. But if they're going the youth route, then it's going to take some time. And Chelsea fans and Frank Lampard himself needs to be a bit more patient.
Barry, Frank Lampard benefiting from the fact that Abramovich has not had to shell out in the last 12 months. So there is money in reserve for Chelsea. There is money to spend, and they're showing it.
There is money available, and they're showing it, going for the top talent, top young talent. Yeah, I don't think he's abandoned that route that you spoke about, where he wants to make sure that Chelsea is a young side. Now, it has its advantages, which were mentioned by Alois and Chris as well. The one thing is that Frank Lampard in himself has got to make sure that the talent that comes in hits the ground running, because there's not going to be a bedding in period that's going to be allowed, especially when money has been spent. You look at the purchase of Kepa Arrizabalaga. When he came on, he had a big reputation to live up to. He hasn't. That experiment didn't work. Now Chelsea are looking at it and thinking, is this our number one? They want to make their money back, and they can't get it back. So that can't happen with Hakim Ziyech. It definitely can't happen with Timo Werner. If they finish Kai Havertz's deal, those players have got to hit the ground running and make sure that they improve Chelsea monumentally, and make sure that Chelsea is there or thereabouts. I think the first goal will definitely be Champions League qualification and becoming a staple there, and then kick on from there.
But when it comes to Kepa, Barry, who you brought up, is that not a function of a keeper who lost confidence as a result of a defense that's not been that great? You take a look at Chelsea, they've had to chop and change their centre-back partnerships. Their fullbacks have not been doing. They've got aged fullbacks now. Guys who were performing very ably 2 seasons ago, like Marcos Alonso, are no longer playing at the same level. Then you've got their captain, Azpilicueta, who's playing at right back, and he's also getting, of course, a bit long in the tooth. Is it not a function, pretty much like David De Gea at Manchester United, when you don't doubt his goalkeeping ability, but he seems to have lost form and confidence, maybe as a result of the players that are playing in front of him?
Look, I would accept that as an ingredient to the dip in or loss of form for Kepa. And I'm going to use the David De Gea example, because David De Gea is the best and the worst of what we have seen, because David De Gea hasn't had a great defense for possibly 2 seasons. But in those seasons, he was Player of the Year at Manchester United, because he was then able to be a good shot stopper, knowing that the back.
But how long can you keep that up for, Barry, where you're constantly called upon to be Superman to save the team? Because sooner or later, you're going to be found out. You can't keep on pulling off the miracle saves.
You can't, but we would have hoped to see some of those miracle saves from Kepa before he then dipped and said, you know what, guys, I fought long and hard, because he has a duty to show up as an individual first and foremost before you start then relying on the rest of the players around you.
The reason why I asked that, Barry, the reason why I asked, because you're looking at his career in isolation to Chelsea. Let's not forget, this is a guy who in Spain ousted David De Gea as Spain #1 when he was at Athletic Bilbao. So he does have the pedigree. He came in, he didn't come out of the blue. What persuaded Chelsea to pay a world record fee for him were his performances that saw him as the best goalkeeper in Spain, and not only as the best goalkeeper in Spain, out David De Gea as Spain's #1. There's a reason why he suddenly went from excellent to poor when he came to Chelsea.
Correct, and that is the key part of all of that. Where our discussion sort of deviates is when he came to Chelsea. And the point I'm making is that Hakim Ziyech, phenomenal player at Ajax, but he's coming to Chelsea. When they arrive in England, these young players have got to be able to show up. They've got a duty to show up on their own first and foremost. Show Chelsea the form that made them spend that money. Kepa Arrizabalaga has not done that for Chelsea yet.
Yeah, I do agree with Barry. I do agree with Barry on that point, Mike, that, you know what, as much as we know that he is a very good goalkeeper, but let's see him serving, making those saves, so that he saved because that defender had done badly, but he saved the day. 2 or 3, so that we can actually know that he has been there. But then he hasn't shown that he is that good goalkeeper that was playing for Athletic Bilbao. He is the #1 for Spain. When he is with Chelsea, he hasn't shown that he is that good. At least Barry is saying Gambo Tradis or something.
Azpi never played well for Chelsea. I find that hard to believe, because I think what Azpilicueta has done is that he's made blunders. But I think for people now to turn around and say that Azpi never showed brilliance at Chelsea, never showed how much of he was. I think that now we would perhaps be pushing it, because I think what I saw was a goalkeeper who started off very well at Chelsea. He was not bad. If you remember the initial stages, and then what happened? He suffered a gradual dip in confidence to a point where he suddenly looked like, you know what, he was error-prone. But when he started, the first 3-4 months, there's no way you'd have told me that Azpi was a bad goalkeeper in November or December.
Mikey, did you realize that you were saying Azpi Kuwait?
Oh, snap.
I don't think that Azpi was playing in goal.
No, I don't think so too.
I was starting to wonder, was he?
But I get you. He certainly... And I agree with you. He certainly had 1 or 2 performances, but when we then aggregate his body of work for the season so far, I think it's more bad than good, and that's where we're saying, okay, he needs to show up a lot more.
Right, now let me get to Chris and say, right, the reason why we went all through this, right, the reason why is because I believe Chelsea are building their team from the wrong area. Chelsea should be looking to build a solid defense before they start getting star attackers. It's pointless having a defense that concedes goals. It's pointless having a defense that's going to be as porous as a sieve when you're trying to rebuild your team. Do what Jurgen Klopp did. Go out and get yourself a defense that's the best in Europe. Once you get a defense, guys, defenses win. Even Sir Alex Ferguson said that. A defense will win you the championship. Stars and strikers win you games, but defenses win you championships.
And I absolutely agree with you. But I think, remember we talked about Frank Lampard he's essentially betting his career on this current move. And I think what you don't want to do is to then play an almost defensive football, because now you're relying on your defense. Playing defensive football, the football is not as exciting anymore. I think for fans, what they want to see is that game in, game out win. And as much as we'd like that eventually they'll be able to challenge, I think what he's trying to do is to strike a balance and almost placate fans and placate the board almost. If he's
Chelsea
able to
fans,
week in, week out.
Chelsea fans, Chris, have never been choosy. Chelsea fans were subjected to park the bus football under Mourinho. Chelsea fans
and won the championship with park the bus football.
So Chelsea fans want to win. If Lampard can win them the championship without playing great football, I think Chelsea fans will take that. But it's interesting to see. I just hope he can invest a bit more in trying to bring in a commanding centre back to play next to Rudiger, because that's what they need.
That centre back is dead.
I'm going to agree with you, Mike, and say that I feel that perhaps Frank Lampard is also showing his lack of tactical or strategic nous in the job of being a manager, in the sense that he's trying to build an attacking side that's able to go forward. But rock and roll football will excite, but it won't win you championships. And I totally agree with you. I think he needs to make more of an investment at the back and shift out some of those aging legs and make sure that he's got as much youth and quality in defense as he's going to have in attack. All right, now Sergio Ramos' 15-year career with Real Madrid looks likely to be extended, with the captain set to be offered a new deal. From next month, the centre-back will be entering the final year of his contract at the Spanish giant. However, according to AS, Real wish to extend his stay by a further 12 months until 2022. Alois, we can see this is the way that normally players who are a bit long in the tooth, contracts that have gone long at particular clubs, are managed into retirement almost. And you can see that Real Madrid are trying to do that. They're trying to get as much as they can out of Sergio Ramos and continue to give him these one-year extensions.
Yeah, that's the way to go, because they don't know when the dip, when you're about to retire, there is a time that a serious dip is going to come. So 1-year contracts are the way to go. We saw Alex Ferguson doing exactly the same thing with Ryan Giggs, and Ryan Giggs kept on going. I think he had about 4 or 5 1-year contracts that kept on getting extended. So they will watch. They'll give you 1-year contract, then they'll watch where you are. They give you another one. I think that's the way to go. And this is a player that has been at Real Madrid. You can actually see that they want him to retire there. They want him there. Probably they've got already plans. They've got plans for him at Real Madrid. So they're just managing him so that they can squeeze as much juice from him as much as they can. Then on retirement, then they can keep him. They want him to retire at Real Madrid, and that's how they're doing it. And at the same time, they want to make sure that they keep him, they give him a contract when he can still produce. They don't want to give him a 3-year contract and then the second year he is no longer producing. They don't want that. So they are being very careful, and that's the way to go.
He's 34 years old right now, and the extension will see him go into his 36th birthday. So that sort of agrees with what Alois is saying.
The Italian football season could finish without a champion if Serie A is stopped again because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Italian Football Federation approved plans for a playoff or the use of an algorithm if the regular season cannot be finished. Serie A clubs decided on Friday to ask for no champion or relegations. The latest plans proposed by the FIGC president, Gabriel Gravina, were approved by a unanimous vote. 3 Serie A representatives did not take part. Barry, they're looking at all sorts of angles in terms of how they could finish out the season, and playoff or algorithm could work out pretty okay for them.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look, they will. Bottom line is that they want to have options, but I foresee that the season will be completed I think the infections are on the downwards slide. I don't see a re-emergence of the virus, especially given that they're well out of their flu season. So I think it's having those options on the table. I think they're credible options, but I don't see them being used.
So the decision is that there could be no champion if the algorithm is used, unless it's mathematically certain at the point the season is stopped again.
A quick story out of Germany as we wrap up the show. Germany boss Joachim Löw has revealed that he plans to use Bayern Munich star Leon Goretzka as a right back. The 25-year-old has been in eye-catching form with the Bundesliga leaders since the resumption of play following the coronavirus crisis by scoring 2 goals and laying on 3 more as FC Bayern have extended their advantage over second-place Borussia Dortmund to 7 points. And I know there's been a lot of talk around a record goal scorer Robert Lewandowski and, of course, the assists of Thomas Müller. But for me, Leon Goretzka has arguably been the player of the season at Bayern Munich. Absolutely fantastic player. Box to box, creates goals, scores them, especially from distance, and he's been a fantastic signing for Bayern Munich from Schalke 04.
He certainly has, and has increased or improved Bayern Munich immeasurably. I would agree with that. Leon Goretzka, a phenomenal player for FC Bayern Munich. We're out of time, but we'll be back tomorrow, so don't miss the show. May God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Manandi, out.